The Garden is an open, inclusive, Christ-like community
where people from many paths
gather to explore, engage, and seek inspiration
to transform our world
through the unconditional love of God.
Explore,
engage,
inspire.
Join us online, in person, and in the community, while featuring local artists. Grow with us online Sundays at 9:15 a.m.
We're glad you're here.
Hello, gardeners. Carolyn here. I hope you're having a great day. It is a beautiful day where I am, and I pray it's a beautiful day for you as well. A couple things I'd like to highlight as we make our way into service. Many of us have read a book recently called I'm Still Here. It's a book by Austin Channing Brown. And we're going to have a special discussion group on that book starting October 14th from 7 to 8 p.m. for 6 weeks. The discussions will be led by our own gardeners, Stephanie Fernhaber and Sherry Mukasa Machamachani. I want to encourage everybody to be part of this study, and if you can't make it into the group, which is limited, I still want to encourage you to read the book. Hey friends, are you looking away for keeping your car clean this fall and winter? Well, or are you in need of a great Christmas stocking stuffer? Well, look no further. We have you covered here at the Garden. The Garden is participating in a crew car wash ticket sales fundraiser. For every car wash ticket purchased of $10, the Garden will receive $5. What a way to keep your car clean and to support your church at the same time. If you're interested in crew car wash tickets, just contact Vicki at thegardenonline.org. Today we finish our series, Getting Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable. And we finish with this, Wrestling for a Blessing. Welcome. We're really glad you're here.
As we come together now, please join me in these universal words of peace. Shalom, Salam, Namaste, peace.
Won't you stand up, you girls and boys? Won't you stand up, stand up, stand up? Won't you stand up and use your voice? Won't you stand up, stand up, stand up? Won't you stand up, you girls and boys? Won't you stand up, stand up, stand up? Won't you stand up and use your voice? Won't you stand up? Won't you stand up? Won't you stand up, stand up, stand up? Won't you stand up and use your voice?
Hi, my name is Morgan Dickason. I grew up in the Church of the Brethren, and I come from a long line of ministers and activists, and I've struggled my whole life with not only my faith, but also the responsibility that comes along with it. I like to focus on the fact that I believe very strongly that faith is nothing without works. And it's very hard not to get lost in figuring out what the right thing to do is. And for me, seeing people systematically being oppressed and dying around the country that I live in is a very clear call to action, because it's very easy to know that the right thing is definitely not to stay silent when it could help contribute to the fact that others, could die. So that made the decision for me very easy to make the video that I made. Keep your eyes closed. Keep your mouth shut, keep your white picket fence and your grass cut, keep your brain trained on the textbooks, the accounts of the few that convinced us this is our world. We are all free, with our life, liberty, and our property. Founding fathers got it all right. Checks and balances made, keep it airtight, keep our pride flying high, the economy free, our coffee, our freedom, our high GDP. Keep your eyes closed. Let your brain rot. Don't ask what became of the melting pot. Don't ask what became of the minority we shipped here to sustain our high GDP. Are we still free? Free to think thoughts from our hearts when the party'd rather our brains rot? Let the money speak for humanity. There's no place for your heart in society. So we buy them all out. Politicians, our rights, our defenders, our clout. Leave them penniless. What do we care? Can't see any struggles from way up here. Keep our eyes closed, our mouths shut. But to self-validate, keep our own strut. Keep your eyes closed. Put your heart here. I'll take it and use it. You needn't fear. See, I need it from here, 'cause my journey is long. The wind in my face, so my heart must be strong. Keep your eyes closed. Put your heart up. It's the one that cries out when your brother's shot. You need not be afraid. No, I don't want your blood. Need your empathy, kindness, your truth, and your love. See, always our unity has come at a cost. Those who fall overseas make us mourn for lives lost. I want no part of death. Not a single more fallen, but creative solutions for what we are longing. Our forefathers had it. Almost, but we're needing solutions to solve what their loopholes were breeding power and money and rights for the few. But we need those same things for the unlucky too. Keep your eyes closed. If you want to divide our brainstorming efforts, pick a political side. If your eyes are closed, then I ask a donation, your heart for the tireless effort to unite this great nation. We the people, here residing, are brave, never lazy. Now, commit to trying.
Will you pray with me? Good morning, God. Hear our prayers. Please help us. We cannot get a grip on overcoming this year. Sometimes we have to take a few steps backwards before we can move forward. But now we are frozen in place, afraid to move for fear that we might make a mistake. But we need to move forward now. You have given us the guidelines to live by, but try as we may, we are missing something. We know there are believers, non-believers, and wannabe believers. We know that many will never, ever change their mindset. Lead us to not be afraid, to take charge. Guide us to a solution so that we may live in harmony. May we look at history and learn from our mistakes so that we can move forward and bring equity to all. May we live peaceably with love and respect for everyone. Let us become champions for those in need and boost the prosperity for all. God, these things we ask for in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Today we are finishing up our series, Getting Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable. This series has been designed to help us consider issues of racial inequity in our nation. It's given us an opportunity to consider our own prejudice and times when we too have felt discriminated against. It's a series that has reminded us of the past and present ways of being that we're not necessarily all that proud of. It's a series that has encouraged us to look at ourselves, the systems we live in and participate in, and to listen to one another. Over the past 5 weeks, I have been reminded of one of my favorite quotes. You can't help but love someone once you've heard their story. For me, this really rings true. Hearing the story of Al Bright and the victory celebration for the baseball team that he could not participate in, he was excluded from because of the color of his skin. Or the story I heard of the little Irish boy who decided to play in a park in an Italian neighborhood next to his, and he was beat up and sent home. Or there are the stories that I've heard of the middle-aged men who have lost their jobs and have been aged out of the workplace market. We've heard the story of George Floyd in a song by Eddie and Taylor Hall called I Can't Breathe. Over the past month, gardeners have embarked on a journey to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I wish today were the day I was able to give you all a certificate and to put the seal on the garden to say, we are indeed a pro-reconciling congregation committed to creating a community of shared diversity. I'd like to say that. I'd like to say that we've ticked all the boxes and we are good to go. But we can't do that just yet. Because we as individuals, as the garden, as a nation, well, we are all still wrestling for a blessing. That image of wrestling for a blessing, well, it comes from this great story in the Bible about Jacob. Now, Jacob was the son of Isaac, the brother of Esau, and the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, one would think a guy with that kind of responsibility would be a man of absolute honor. But the truth is that Jacob was a troublemaker from before birth. Maybe you recall, he is the one who is known for grabbing his brother Esau's heel, trying to get ahead of him in the birth canal. This getting ahead act, well, that was just a sign of things to come. See, he lived his life always trying to get ahead and to get something more. All through childhood and adolescence, it was all about Jacob all the time. Perhaps his most selfish act happened as a young man, when he would steal the family blessing, playing a trick on his near-blind father. And with this act, his brother could take no more, turn to violence. Because people who have been harmed for years will often get violent. So Jacob Knowing he was no match for his brother, well, he left town and he went to be with an uncle in a faraway land. This is where he tried to bury this pain and to go on with life as if nothing ever happened. But you know, things like stealing a blessing and getting into such conflict with your brother, well, it just doesn't go away. Sometime later, God spoke to Jacob and reminded him that he could not run away from his problems forever. So Jacob, after God interceded, planned to return home. But I have to say, even with God interceding, Jacob still had his own plan. He didn't have a very good heart about all of it. No, he still tried to manipulate and control the situation. He decided it would be a good idea to send ahead some gifts for his brother to soften him up. Then he would send ahead his wives and his children, thinking that they will get the brother in the right mind. But guess what? It didn't work. Instead, Esau had a very different response altogether. Esau grabbed 400 of his buddies to create an army, and he decided it was time to take his brother Jacob down. This, of course, freaked Jacob out. In fact, he was scared, really scared, and found himself all alone because he had sent everybody else across. So he is on his way to encounter his brother, and he stops by a river to camp. And in the night of a fitful, fearful sleep, he is attacked. Here it is found in Genesis 32, verses 22 through 30. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob went to the place called Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." Interesting how Jacob has tried everything to get his way, but when he realizes he is defenseless and all alone, there is but one thing he needs. Jacob needs God. Not only does he need God, but he has to wrestle with God so that he can become the man that God has called him to be. It's interesting to me how Jacob has wrestled his whole life for what he wants, and it's only when he wrestles with God that he finds what he really needs for his life. A wrestling match with God, and it is in that wrestling match that he finds his true name and his true purpose for life. Another point I find so interesting in this story is that it appears as though God gives up on Jacob. God says, "I cannot do this anymore, you stubborn man." And in the end, it is Jacob who needs to see he is powerless and surrenders to God, and he will get God's blessing. I was reminded of this story as we have shared in this series, because I have seen many similarities with the story of Jacob in matters of racism. First, like Jacob, we are all doing our best to get ahead in life. And for some, there is a willingness to do anything it takes. It doesn't matter what it takes, as long as in the end, you end up with most of the toys. We've all heard that phrase before, haven't we? He who dies with the most toys wins. It's been attributed to Malcolm Forbes. Like Jacob, we have a romance with money and with power in this nation. And it would appear that we are willing to do anything to keep our money, to keep our power, and to keep our toys. I believe it's time for us to really ask ourselves, is this money, power, and toys, is really God's blessing for the world? Or is it just for individuals? Is it just for me? Because if it's not for everyone, it's not from God. Think about it. While the stock market soars, there are many who go without basics like food and housing and aid they need. And as long as we're warm in the winter and cool in the summer, it doesn't matter that we're destroying the planet. Well, then that's not God's blessing. Over the past few weeks, we've shared in stories and articles online that provide information that would indicate that there are centuries of legal injustice against our brothers and sisters of color. Yet we keep moving along, not even giving it a notice. In fact, some of you have just signed off. You just don't like the topic or the feeling. And in today's world, you have the ability to just tune out or to turn off. Some have turned off even before the service starts, saying the church is not the place for politics. I even heard from someone saying, and I thank them for being honest, that the garden is a place they go to feel comfortable. I thank them for that, but I also challenge us all to say that we have a desire to grow as gardeners. And well, friends, gardens don't grow through comfort. Gardens grow by breaking out of seeds and looking for light and water and suffering through drought, and through it all, if tended and cared for, gardens will bear good fruit. Friends, the only way we can grow is to at times plant ourselves in topics we don't like. If we want to truly grow in our faith and be true to God and true people of faith, we got to wrestle with stuff we don't like. We have to go beyond the attitude that as long as I'm taken care of and my own are taken care of, and my stuff I have, well, that's all good. Well, I have to tell you, then ultimately you're not living in God's blessing. Blessing is what God is calling us all to, not just some. And I don't know about you, but I'm no longer comfortable with finding comfort for me and my family first. I'm no longer comfortable watching as people sit in a mile-long line waiting for free food, while others get frustrated if their fast food or DoorDash order takes longer than they think. This may be one of the richest nations in the world, but I don't feel comfortable preaching that to the 150 people who wait in line for sack lunches at Roberts Park every Sunday. Friends, I'm sorry, but I think it's time we get uncomfortable, because it's not God's blessing unless it's a blessing for all of us. It's not a real blessing if it's just mine. The time has come to wrestle with God for a blessing. And don't go down until you get the blessing. Don't let go until you know how to move forth in this world where we recognize we are all together in this. In Jacob's divine encounter, he receives a new name, a new identity. But he is not instantly transformed into this perfect person. Blessing takes time, and it takes wrestling with God. I would say we can all relate these days. We are all seeking to live in a new way of being, and we are all trying to do our best to figure out how we can make it through this together. Friends, we must keep wrestling for the blessing. And the only way we can do that is to do so by surrendering our lives and our will over to God, to step forth in faith and in faith alone. Some people pretend that they have this strong, vibrant faith, and it comes when no one has no doubts at all, when they always know what to do, when they always have the right answer, and when they always do the right thing. Well, I have to tell you, I believe that my faith has grown during this time. And for me, it's been a tremendous time of doubt and knowing that I don't know, but I have faith, and I'm engaged daily in relationship building with a God I know who loves me. And there are times when I am wrestling with God and struggling with God, and I will do so until I and you and all everywhere have the blessing. Yes, friends, this is certainly not a one-and-done series kind of thing. It's not something that you can check off your list, and it is certainly not a one-way relationship. Paul talks about this peace that passes all understanding in Philippians. That peace that passes all understanding is the knowledge that God is in the struggle with you. Part of being faithful is God's pursuit of you throughout your life and your pursuit of God. A vibrant faith is one that knows it does not have all the answers. Obtaining answers brings on new questions, but we don't give up. We hang on to God, and through the process we grow and we become stronger. Today's culture idolizes winners, a person who has defeated another, sports teams, the person who got the promotion, one who had the financial windfall, racing cars and games and miniature golf. We hear names like Bezos and Gates, and we perk up and listen because they're the ones that know how to win. They seem to have mastered their doubts and their shortcomings. However, people of faith, there are a lot more of us here on this other end that are still wrestling for the blessing, still trying to figure out how to move forth in life and to hang on until we experience the blessing. There are a lot more people out there still looking for a sack lunch, still looking for some food. And there's still a world where we are not all winners. So friends, we keep wrestling for the blessing. And as long as there are people who are being discriminated against for the color of their skin or their economic condition, we need to keep wrestling for the blessing. We are not there yet in our world, and we are struggling with real difficulties. There is grief, and there is pain, and there is loss. There are feelings of helplessness as we watch our brothers and sisters struggle with addiction. Now is not the time to let go. Now is the time to wrestle with God. And not to let go until we get the blessing. In fact, the time is now to refuse to let go of God, saying, I will wrestle with you till I'm blessed, and he's blessed, and she's blessed, and they're all blessed. Just as God fights for us, sometimes we must use our questions and our doubts to wrestle with God and refuse to let go. Receive that blessing, and that will allow you to continue on your journey with a faithful relationship with a God who loves you. Let's not give up, friends. The time has come for wrestling with God in the midst of our discomfort. Fight for that blessing. And when you do that, you will know that you have had a divine encounter. We're not there yet, but we're closer than we were 5 weeks ago. And I encourage each and every one of us to hang on, to not let go until you know you are living in God's blessing. Don't stop wrestling, friends, until you have that blessing. Amen.
Hey, welcome little gardeners. Welcome to Stepping Stones. Come on down, have a seat in front here. I know you're missing that, so I hope you're all doing well today. So my name's Kevin, as you know, and I know your names. We know each other's names. And names say a lot about us, right? You ever heard the saying, what's in a name? So when we think about a name, your name, my name, a lot of people were named for a certain reason. Maybe after a grandparent or friend or a singer. I have a person I know named Shania. Her mother liked Shania Twain, and that's her name. Name says a lot about you, who you are, too. When you hear the name Pastor Carolyn, you probably think certain thoughts: kind, caring, warm, loving, helpful. Names bring out certain feelings and qualities that you feel about somebody. I wonder when someone says your name, what do they think? When they hear the name Jameson, they hear the name Devin, I wonder what people think about you. I wonder what people think about me when they hear Kevin Young. You can't change your name. Sometimes we wish you could. Funny story about my wife, Jessica, the blonde lady behind the camera. Her name growing up was Jessica Sue Bastian. But for some reason, I need to ask her why she went by Sue. So anybody before the age, who knew my wife before the age of 22, would have called her Sue. When she got out of college and got her first job, she started using her real first name, Jessica. If people ran into her today who didn't know her since high school, they would probably call her Sue, and she would have to correct them that she's Jessica. So names say a lot about us. The Bible story that we read today about Jacob, he was this person who loved God, but he also had questions about God. And the story is him actually wrestling with God, physically wrestling with God. And at the end of the wrestling, when they got done, God asked him what his name was, and he said, "My name is Jacob." And God said, "No, from now on you're going to be called Israel, because you wrestled with God and you overcame this great obstacle." COVID-19, these last, 6 months now, have brought a lot of obstacles and a lot of wrestling. It's brought a lot of changes. People have lost jobs, they've lost loved ones, they can't pay their bills, they can't pay their mortgage on their house. And some people during these tough times have really had a hard time. So we've had tough times, we've had to overcome, we've had to persevere, and you know what? We're here, right? And so my question for you today is, what does your name mean now that you have survived? Yes, you've survived, you've overcome these last 6 months. Is your name different? Does it mean anything different? For me, I've learned some things about my name. I've discovered being at home, I work at home every day. Some days I don't even leave the house except to go in the yard. I've learned that even though I'm a kind of person who thinks I don't need people, I'm kind of a loner and an introvert, I need people. People are important to me. And so I hope this week, when you hear someone call your name, you reflect on, what does your name really mean? Who are you inside? I hope it's love and caring and forgiveness and honesty. And so, as you go through this week, just remember that your name says a lot about you. Be proud of that name. Have a good week.
People all over the world, everybody join hands, start a love train, all aboard. People all over the world, love ride, join hands, love ride, start a love train. The next stop that we make will be England. Tell all the folks in Russia and China too. Don't you know that it's time to get on board and let this train keeps on riding, riding on through. Yeah,
rumble. Get ready to rumble with God and wrestle till you receive that blessing. Go now, my friends, and may the love of God be yours today, tomorrow, and forevermore. Keep wrestling for the blessing. Amen.
All the lonely people crying, it could change if we just get started. Lift the darkness, light a fire for the silent and the broken hearted. Won't you stand up, stand up, stand up? Won't you stand up, you girls and boys? Won't you stand up?